Yo, 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 yo. It's your man Kilogram, You Better Not Lie podcast. I came here to talk about the Joe Buttons podcast reunion. I want to shout out Joe Buttons, Maul, Rory, Parks, Savon, and the rest of the staff, man. What I got to witness yesterday was potting at an all-time level. That was some potting right there. That was some good podcasting right there. I'm not gonna lie though. Watching the episode, I was grateful and blessed to see that these brothers have tried to mend these issues and come together and bring their differences to the table and be so transparent to give that to their fans. I thought that was a brilliant idea that what they did. But one thing I didn't agree on is it seemed like there is still some underlying tension going on with the Joe Budden podcast. Now, mind you, I'm just a podcaster myself, and I'm not trying to meddle in their business. This is just my review on the reunion. You know what I'm saying? Clearly, I have some points that I jotted down, so I'm going to speak about each individual person first in my breakdown. So the first person I want to talk about is Maul. Maul said some things and let the world know that he is in this podcast thing as Joe Budden's friend. He doesn't have to be on anything contractually. He is looking at it strictly from street rules, meaning that if we came up out the mud together, we started something together, there's no way you can say to me that I'm not a part of this or I shouldn't have anything to say about it or the Joe Budden podcast is not my business. Now, Maul said out of his own mouth what sparked him and Joe's difference was that Joe said to him verbatim that the Joe Budden podcast is not your business. Now, Maul was hurt by that, and Maul said that he felt offended and he felt like if there's no respect amongst friends, then he doesn't want to be a part of it. I agree with Maul on that aspect. You know what I mean? I agree that if I'm going to be around somebody, they must respect me. Business or not. You got to respect me. If you call me your friend, you have to respect me if I'm in your presence. Vice versa. It's a two-way street. Now, only thing I can say about Maul is that I do understand the street principle that he abides by. He's built on loyalty. He's built on Maul is a person that a handshake will suffice as a contract. If you give me your word, then I can take your word to the bank. Maul is one of those type of guys, and I commend Maul for being one of those type of guys. But when millions of dollars, thousands of dollars, advertisers, when that is on the table, the street politics goes out the window. The homeboy shit goes left. Joe understands that because Joe has been privy to contracts. Joe has been privy to doing business with sharks. And what I mean by sharks is people at Def Jam, managers, road managers, people that have taken advantage of Joe's career. Joe has been privy to these type of people since he was in his teens or early 20s. So he knows that when a contract goes sour, people are left to figure the shit out on their own. Maul comes from a family that has some ties to Rockefeller and things like that. So I think that he's probably heard these things from his brothers, but I don't know if he's been on contracts where he's been a part of shady business or people doing him wrong. So he's still operating off the street New York values that he came up with. And they all three of these guys make valid points. But one thing I commend Maul on is standing his ground against Joe Buttons, who is clearly the head of Joe Budden, the Joe Budden Network, Joe Budden podcast. Maul looked comfortable expressing his point. He stood fast on saying, you know what, I don't agree with what you said, and it hurt my feelings. And if that is the narrative, then I don't want to be a part of that narrative. So I salute Maul. Now, secondly, I'm going to Rory. Okay, so Rory is a guy that really wasn't around Joe and Maul like that, and somehow he came into their circumference maybe later on. But Maul and Joe already had a solid relationship, probably spanning 20 years or so. I could only speculate, but these are some of the things I'm taking from the interview. Rory and Joe seem to have some weird tension. Me, as a fan of the Joe Budden podcast, I'm not gonna lie, I never caught on to the tension between Joe and Rory. Rory is a very sarcastic dude, and so is Joe. So when they would push the envelope and make jokes and say little things to each other, I thought it was just them understanding that that's their friendship, and they're just both two sarcastic guys. That's what I thought. When Joe dug underneath and listened to some of the podcasts, on his off hours, and he would hear things like "fight me" and "let's step outside and fight." Allegedly, these are some things Rory said. Joe didn't like that, and Joe felt like if you're my friend, you shouldn't be calling me out for a fight. So therefore, I think you need to take some time off from the pod. Cool. Rory admitted that he had tension with Joe. He admitted that his relationship is not as strong as Maul and Joe Budden's. So at the end of the day, I thought it was very noble of him to come on the podcast. I can clearly see in Rory's explanation and his poise and his presence there that there was a little, he was uncomfortable at some times. You know what I mean? He was uncomfortable explaining his position to Joe. He was on the defensive at times. Joe was rebuttaling with a lot of sarcasm. But one thing I can commend Joe on is Joe did allow those brothers to speak. The only thing I'm going to say about Rory and Maul is that they have to understand that Joe is the star. I'm sure they know that. It sucks to find out that when your business or the thing that you guys are all a part of, it becomes successful. And I think it sucks to find out that you are in, some people's eyes, you're just a worker, or you're just an employee of something, but you have no stake into the podcast. It sucks to find out that after the money is on the table. I felt like both of these brothers, even though I know that they're friends with Joe, I think that they should have had the conversation with Joe when the podcast started as to, is this your podcast and you're employing us? Or is this a group effort, a partnership? 198, wherever episode that they're on, it's not good to find out your status of where you stand on the business. So, once again, this is just my review today. It's not going to be long-winded. I stand on the fact that I am very happy that these brothers came back together and attempted to put their differences on the table. You know what I mean? So third, I want to speak on Joe. Speaking about Joe being the face of the podcast, having the predominantly having all of the contacts, due to his relationships that he's built in the music business. Not only, Joe has also been a guy that's been very present on YouTube since the YouTube days began with Joe Budden TV. He's been infamous for the Wu-Tang beef. He's been infamous for his the beautiful women that he dates, and their fallouts, their fall-ins and things like that. So, and not to mention, he's an exceptional rapper. I know Joe personally. Joe is very talented. So Joe has brought that audience to the You Better Not Lie podcast. They watched his ups and his downs. So he has a built-in audience that he shared that platform with his friends. Cool. Now, the thing about Joe is Joe basically he's in a tough position of being the CEO of Joe Budden Podcast, the founder, the owner, the creator, and being a friend with two guys that he has love for. It's hard to put on the business hat and the friend hat because some friends don't want to look at you in a business frame. They don't want to look at you as you're my boss. You're my man. We went to jail together. We bust down hoagies. We sold drugs together. Whatever you guys look at to make y'all friends, you can't separate the friend and the businessman. Joe is clearly, as a 40-year-old man, saying, although I am your friend, I am your boss. And that's just what it is. I bought the platform here. I shared it with you guys. And now this show is $1 million or a couple $1 million show. But I'm still your boss. There's still rules that apply to this podcast because it's his podcast. So him saying that Maul does not get to dictate what goes on with that show, Joe admitted that he shouldn't have worded it like that. And I agree. I agree that you shouldn't have told Maul that it's none of his business about the podcast when he is a host on that podcast. So therefore it is his business. But I understand Joe's point to, hey, I'm the guy making all the sacrifices. I'm Joe Buttons. My all of my fuck ups you guys have laughed at. Not Rory and Maul per se, but he means the world. You guys have seen my ups, my downs, and my triumphs, my tragedies. But this is what makes Joe. This is the reason why people are here on this platform to see Joe. So at the end of the day, Joe is offended because he's feeling like I've provided an opportunity for you guys. I'm paying you guys, and you guys feel like we're equal, but we are not. But he feels that they're making him an asshole by keep reminding them that he's their boss. And you can look at Joe and tell that it pains him to say, I'm your boss. Because Rory and Maul now have to understand, and I'm sure they have because they came back. They have to understand now that, okay, although Joe is my friend, I have to respect that he is cutting my check right now. He signs my check. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, Joe said some harsh things. One other thing that I don't agree with Joe said right in front of Rory is Joe told Maul, you should never have a problem with how I basically deal with Rory. I thought that when he said that in that capacity, at that moment, right then and there, you're seeing a public divide. And I think that if they had really mended these issues, that shouldn't have been said on the pod, because it clearly lets the fans know that he doesn't fuck with Rory like he rocks with Maul. And I thought that, come on, Joe, like, we both Jersey legends. Like, I just thought that, for you guys to be mending everything, and I say this with respect, but for you guys to be mending everything, that was a light jab. Okay. Now, Joe had some petty moments. Rory had a very petty moment when he brought up something about Slaughterhouse. I didn't think that was cool. Although I know you were on the ropes, Rory, and you were swinging back and you wanted to know, like, okay, well, if somebody replaced you in Slaughterhouse, blah, 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 how would you feel? I felt like you're not in a position to sling mud when at the end of the day, you guys are all there to try to repair the broken relationship. If you're repairing, you can't sling mud. You have to own your faults and what you did to get the situation to where it's at. And Joe has to own his. Now, speaking about that, what Maul talked about the replacement of him and Rory, about Ish, and I believe it's another guy named Ice or something like that. So I could be wrong on the name, guys. It's a matter of the mind. A matter of the mind, not the heart. All right, so Malls talked about he unfollowed Joe. He couldn't fathom the fact that Joe would quickly replace these guys. He thought it was disrespectful. He didn't want no part of it. He said it was corny to see two new members on there. Okay. Now Malls' thing was no disrespect to those brothers, but that's not the Joe Budden podcast. Joe Budden's thought process is, listen, I don't care what you say. I employ 30 people and I still have to pay their bills and pay my bills. And I have advertisers and things like that where they want to know, Joe, what are you going to do? We gave you money. Does the show go on? As a business owner myself, I can attest to that. And the show always must go on. Because at the end of the day, you're the head. You got to make a decision. If you get fired from Apple, the owner of Apple is not going to shut down for 3 weeks or 6 weeks until you decide that you're over your emotional breakdown. They're going to bring somebody in there. They're going to have the HR department go into those resumes in the email, and they're going to say, hey, bring Susie and Johnny in here who applied for the job 2 weeks ago, and tell them, guess what? As long as they meet the criteria, they're hired immediately. And we're going to give them a bonus. Show got to go on. It's life. Now, Marlon Rory thought friends, Joe being a friend, he was supposed to do that. But friends and business never mix. Biggie told us that in the 10 crack commandments. He said family and blood don't mix in the 10 crack commandments. We already know that. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, all of these guys made valid points. What I feel like is Joe is wearing the hat of an executive now. He has tapped out from the friend part. Once he's cashed, remember, Joe said he made his first $1 million doing a podcast. This is Joe's lifeline right here. This is his bread and butter. This is his baby right here. He's not going to let nobody stand in the way of that. So, in closing, like I told you, I wasn't going to be long with this right here. I understand this podcasting dynamic better than a lot of people think I do. Like I said, I've been through a couple of co-hosts and things like that too, so I understand it. I understand that some people can't see you or respect you in the light of a business owner or their boss. They just don't like to look at somebody that they laugh and joke with as superior to them. They look at it like, you're my equal. Why would I think that you're my boss? You're my boy. I can't look at you like that. But the fact is, you have to look at that person as your boss. Because at the end of the day, if it's their idea, if it's their vision, if it's their connections, if it's their resources, if it's their reputation that they bring to the table, which is also bringing the audience, but they are courteous enough to allow two friends or co-hosts to enjoy the ride at the same time, get paid off of that ride and monopolize off of the situation. You have to understand that and respect it. What Maul and Rory should be doing at this point is springboarding other businesses off of their celebrity on the Joe Budden podcast. Because he's basically putting them in a position to do other things. They may not realize it because I think their focus is the friendship. And in business, you always go wrong when you put friends before business. That's my take on the You Better Not Lie podcast about the Joe Budden podcast. This was a big moment for podcast history. Like I told you, Joe, Rory, Maul, that was podcasting at 1 million. You heard? The transparency that you guys gave us today, I felt, oh my God, I felt awkward. I felt like my parents was arguing and I don't know which side to pick. The tension was so thick in the room, you could cut it with a butter knife. You know what I mean? But I think that you guys having that public display of, just, that back and forth and that just, giving your opinions and standing your ground. I think that was good to show other podcasters out there that, people, on the low scale, on the high scale, people go through problems. But what I can leave y'all with today is handle your business if you're starting a podcast. Don't go into it with friends thinking that, we homeboys for life, because the first time you get a check and nobody had a conversation, everybody's going to say I'm equal. Everybody's going to say, hey, I should have just as much ownership as you. But you got to ask that person, what have you contributed to the podcast? What have you brought to the table other than yourself? And these are real conversations that you need to have before it starts, not after or when you're at the table negotiating a check. So salute to the JVP. You know what I mean? I'm a fan. I'm glad you guys are going to work this out. And I can see now that this is probably going to make you guys a tighter crew. You know what I mean? Because everybody at this point knows their role. Leave it in the comments if you think, my review of the Joe Budden podcast was accurate. That's all I got, You Better Not Lie podcast. Make sure you get the merch, man. This is how we doing it, Your man. I get so many people that call me all the time and be like, man, I want to buy a house, man. Or I want to get that new condo with the lake in the back. I want to get that new Beamer, man. I want to get that new, what's the new joint everybody be talking about? The Aston Martin or the Wraith. But your credit won't get it. You got bad credit, right? You got a 500. A 500 ain't going to get you nothing out here, man. But guess what? There's good news. I got help. But I come bearing good news. My homegirl Yasmin, she has a credit company called Uses. You see the logo on the screen. They can help you with all those negative reports on your credit report. You can get those taken off instantly. Guess what? Today we got a special today, $89.99 for you to sign up. You want to buy that house? You want to buy that Wraith? You want to buy that condo on the lake? You want to get the attention of Big Booty Judy? Contact my homegirl Yasmin, working for Uses Credit Company, credit repair. She can change your life in a day. I'm going to sign up today as well. It's only $89, man. You got $89. You spend it at the strip club. You want to buy that home that you want? You need to tap in with Uses right now. Look at the logo on the screen. Look at the link. Click the link. Fill it out. You're signed up. $89 just for today. It's your man, Kilogram. You Better Not Lie podcast. Uses Credit Repair. Make sure you tell them that Graham sent you when you hit Yasmin up.